Nat, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Another fellow podcaster, an award-winning host. I feel like your bio is quite exceptional. For those listening, let me just give you a little bit of an insight into Nat. So she is...
Do you really want to? This is the part where I'm like, no, just cut to the chase. Like, do we have to do this part? It's like, oh gosh, and she did that, and she did that. No.
She did. We need to flatter you a little bit as we introduce.
Right, sorry.
So she's a best-selling author. She has the show, The Wellness Collective, the podcast show, as I said, and she's very well-versed in the podcast area. She's also the #1 women's natural health. Start that again. She's also the founder of Melbourne's #1 women's natural health clinic and basically is the hormone revolutionist. So, girlfriend, do you know what I did when I knew I was going to get you on the show?
What did you do?
I did a shout out to our community because I wanted to know what are people freaking out about,
Sure.
and we need your tips. Now, these are pretty big topics. So, and I'm aware that like we have you for a period of time. We don't have you all day. So we need
I can speak really fast or we can just come back another time and cover more.
We may
you
need you back. We had so many comments
Really?
around wellness. Now,
right.
and this is a little bit rogue for us on Parenthood. So Parenthood, I typically will bring on mums and dads, couples, individual parents to talk about, I guess, a lot of the challenges that they're having since becoming parents,
Sure.
right? The wellness angle we've never touched on, but as soon as I put it out to the community, it's gone bloody gangbusters.
Okay.
So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to prioritize with the topics that people wanted to hear about the most, and we'll
Sure.
see how we go. Okay. So we're going to start with perimenopause. Am I saying that
Yes,
right?
you
Okay,
are.
good.
Yes. And there's no good way to talk about it, but it's just reality.
Right. So I'm going to read verbatim a DM that I got, there were so many variations of this DM. I'm a 38-year-old woman and am in my perimenopausal years. I hear keeping strong and focusing on my health now is critical to better prepare my body for menopause. Why is that? And what would you recommend I do in the lead up to menopause? I want your kind of top tips, maybe top 2 or 3 tips. What comes to mind?
Great question. I think what we've got to be mindful of and what we've forgotten is what we do now shapes the future, always. Not just for our perimenopause, menopause and beyond, but it's what we do in our teen years shapes our fertile years shapes our perimenopause. And one of the main reasons we're seeing so many women suffer is a direct result of modern lifestyle. We actually can say that now. It's the chemicals and the toxins that we're exposed to, the fragrances, the sometimes things in our food, depending on what we're eating, our water, our environment. So these factors all influence our hormones and can really mess them up. So using your body as feedback is the best thing that you can do. Understand, what is my body showing me right now today? What symptoms do I have? Are my periods heavy? Are they light? Are they long cycles? Are they missing cycles? We have so much feedback that our body gives us. It's not a mystery, just no one's taught us to do it, right? So we're sitting here going, I've got no idea. Or we've been on birth control for a long time and we don't know how to read the signs because they're being suppressed. So I always say to patients, look at the feedback your body's giving you. If you don't know what that is because you are using birth control to somewhat manage symptoms, think about what they were before you were using birth control. Because that doesn't change. The underlying processes don't change. And then we've got this feedback that we can then go, okay, a test result may or may not show me what I'm dealing with, but my body's signs and symptoms are never wrong. So using that, I think, is really important. If we are also not all aware of those factors that I just mentioned, if the #1 thing you did was like, right, I'm going to get serious about chemical exposures, it would mean looking at alternatives. And so that would be cleaning products, body products, washing powders, detergents, everything. Now, my advice is don't go and clean out the cabinet fully. That would be expensive and stressful. No one needs that. Yeah. So just each time that it's time to replace something, find the better alternative. We're so lucky. We're living at a time there are so many great alternatives, whether it's makeup, hair care, dishwashing liquid. Once upon a time when we had to find an alternative, it felt awful. It didn't perform. You felt like you were compromising. Whereas now these products perform as well, if not better than other options that we're currently maybe using. So if that's the one thing that you hear, and the other final thing I will say is we eliminate hormones through the bowel. So if we've got, excess and just what we need to get rid of, we do that through the bowel. So if you're not going to the toilet daily, there's another big quick tip to start to look at, all right, what do I need to do that? I need to probably increase fiber. I need to be hydrated. Do I need to maybe take a course of probiotics? Prebiotics, which is fiber, are amazing for gut health, for the flora, and for helping our bowels to be happier. So more like that Goldilocks. If they're overactive or if you're eliminating too frequently, that's a challenge. And if you're not, then that's a challenge as well. If you're constipated, that's a problem. So really looking at the bowel. So if you were to do those two things just from listening, that would really make a big difference. And then again, it's constant reassessment. And I think that's what we're not taught to do. We're kind of very good at looking at the bigger picture, but we can use the feedback of the cycle before to tell us, okay, how do I course correct for the next cycle? So constantly getting that feedback, looking and going, okay, my period was fine, no issues. I look at my month, it was a stress-free month. I looked after myself, I exercised, I ate well. As opposed to the month where you look back, especially probably if your cycle in December is a bit wonky, it's a crazy month, right? So our body is just responding to the environment that we put it in, and really looking at that feedback, I think, is the best thing that we can do.
What if you're someone like me who has the marina and therefore doesn't have a period?
You can you will still be cycling as such. You just won't necessarily. Some women get a period, some women don't. But I would still track signs and symptoms. And I would, because you probably find that you are still actually somewhat cycling. And you'll notice, but just in doing that, you can give yourself a little bit of grace when you're feeling a little bit like you want to tear your hair out. But it is a little bit more tricky. So it is about actually using tools. This is why I also love anything that's a wearable tracker, whether it's your watch or a ring, something like that. Allows you to sort of still get that feedback without you having to think about it, because it will still track your temperature, and then you can still see whether or not you're ovulating and would be getting a period. Or some women just get a really light bleed when they've got a marina. So it's about assessing everything, which can feel overwhelming, which is why some type of wearable can be a good idea for busy women.
Yeah, right. So in preparing, so what I'm hearing is that, because I mean, what ages typically is menopause? Is it 50 or where?
Yeah, it's usually somewhere in our 50s.
50s.
I say to look, our ovarian reserve starts to decline from around the age of 35. Our ovarian function starts to decline from around the age of 35. That doesn't mean you are flung into perimenopausal symptoms, but it's the age where things start to change. So it's that window before menopause. Could last for 15 years. We don't want 15 years of limbo. We want to live our best life. So I think it's very important, again, to understand what's happening. I spend more time regulating women's cortisol than I do balancing their sex hormones. And it's because we see little fluctuations over a really long period of time when it comes to our hormones, our sex hormones specifically. We see that happen over, like I said, 15 years into menopause. Those fluctuations are actually driven crazy by cortisol. So instead of seeing little fluctuations, we start to see big fluctuations. And this is where women go, I feel out of control. I don't feel well. I'm not sleeping. My periods are terrible. And it's actually cortisol that's having the influence on our sex hormones, not the other way around. So I spend more time regulating cortisol, and we need to do that especially in these years, because our hormones are more temperamental than they were when we were younger. And then that is the best way to then scaffold yourself into menopause.
So cortisol, now, excuse my ignorance, to do with stress, yeah?
That's right.
So you're helping people manage their stress levels.
I'm helping people manage stress.
Really?
And when you do that, the body actually knows what to do. Your body knows what to do. It's only ever responding to the environment that it's in and the environment that we put it in, whether that's the internal landscape or external environment, what we eat, how we sleep. Those things, if you walked away and you're like, oh, well, you got Nat Kringoudis on the podcast and she said sleep better and eat more, like that's not revolutionary, but we don't do it.
No.
So I spend a lot of time talking about if you also prioritize sleep, and it's hard because we often I've got a teen daughter that loves to download at 11:30 at night. It's like, could we do this a bit earlier? That would really help me. I know that's the one thing that if I prioritize, everything is better. Your body also takes out the trash when you're sleeping. Like you take out the waste, you repair at that point in time.
Yeah.
If you're shortchanging yourself there, that's a big factor.
Yeah.
But it is hard, and we have to decide whether or not it's enough of a priority. How bad are you feeling?
Yes.
Is the question to ask ourselves. So it's those little things. It's not that it's anything different going into menopause. It's that we have to actually prioritize them.
Yes. And so for me, sleep is massive. I need my 8 hours. I'm sort of just reflecting on what you're saying. We're busy parents. We've got a lot of other responsibilities. We may be working. So that sleep aspect is critical for me. Moving my body, critical. And this person says, I hear it's good to be keeping strong and fit now in preparation. Can you talk to us a little bit about the why?
Absolutely. Well, your muscle is really the what am I trying to say? Someone can cut this out for a second. It's the organ. That's the word I'm looking for. So your muscle really, we know, is what we're giving the title of the longevity the longevity organ. So it helps to create or carve out our metabolism, and we really want to maintain muscle mass as we get older, and we lose it quickly if we don't keep it. So I'm at a point now where the way I see it is I can't go back to what I was when I was 21. We know that logically, but I think that there's a window in time where you've got some flexibility around this, and you're like, I can burn the candle at both ends. I can get it all done. You cannot anymore. You feel horrendous. Yeah. Even the late night, you feel hungover the next day.
Yeah.
So really prioritising muscle, and this is why lifting is extremely important for women as we get older, because we want to maintain that. And once we lose it, it's very, very hard to get it back. Some would say impossible to get it back to where it was.
Okay.
So that's definitely the organ of longevity. We want to be prioritising that. The other thing that we need to be mindful of is obviously everything starts to, it all just starts to decline. So how can we start to maintain some of these other things? And one of the other things we know to maintain muscle is protein. So prioritising protein, and also your hormones are made of fat and protein. So for those two reasons, you really do want to make sure that you are leading a diet that is protein first. And that's hard if you're a vegetarian or vegan. I don't have great solutions. You just have to try your best. But also, like I said, for that health of the muscle as well, we absolutely need protein to build that. But having said that, the way we repair our muscles is also through carbohydrates. So we need to eat a balanced diet. It's not just you listening here going, okay, I'm just going to eat protein now. That wouldn't be a great idea. But do prioritise it, because it's probably the thing that's on the lesser of the list, especially breakfast. Breakfast is traditionally grab a piece of toast and run out the door.
Yeah.
And so really prioritising that in the morning can make a really big difference, and it helps us to feel satisfied as well.
Yeah, I love it. So I guess to wrap on that question, what I'm hearing is, it's not like these are like, because I always think perimenopause, that's like this doom day, like we've got to be so nervous and worried and stuff. But you're just like, mate, listen to your body, sleep well, lift weights if you can, because you want to build that, have a balanced diet, and really just reflect on your health and ensure that you don't, go down this downward spiral, which is, would you say that is essentially the
I think that the takeaway really, because those things are important at all phases, but it's the little tweaks that you have to make. It's actually being more aware than ever before. That's the difference.
Yep.
These things have always been important, but it's more the regular check-ins with self and the regular check-in with stress. How stressed am I? How overwhelmed do I feel? Do I need to feel overwhelmed in this moment? Am I choosing stress because it's a bad habit? And choose again. Yeah. And try and keep stress where it's warranted for an event where you're like, this requires me to pull on my reserves right now. It requires this precious release of cortisol. Yeah. Let it flow. Yeah. It's almost it's actually consciously being stressed as opposed to unconsciously being stressed.
Yeah, I love that. And this is and another question came through around the gut health. I'm a mum of 2, and I used to have gut issues pre-kids, but then during pregnancy and the early years of parenting, my stomach got better. But now my daughter's 6 years old and I'm bloating again, and I'm wondering if it's stress or diet related. Would love your thoughts and some key tips on how to improve my gut health. We've touched on a few things like the diet, but do you find bloating and stress are linked?
Absolutely, 100%. Stress impacts the gut no different to a course of antibiotics. So we know our antibiotics clear out all good and bad bacteria, unfortunately. That's what they do. Yeah. So this is why they need to be used with that in mind. It's not something we would be using every single day of the week if we can avoid it. But it has this very similar impact on the gut microbiome. So stress, therefore, has its way, clears things out, and makes us susceptible to it. It also has a flow-on effect to our immune health. Obviously, we've touched on hormones. Can pull the handbrake on certain sex hormones. And we don't feel good when we're in that constant state of overwhelm and stress. It's just not a good place to exist in. So absolutely you will find a direct correlation between high stress and bloating. You've got to also remember the way that we're designed when we release cortisol is it pumps blood to our extremities, taking it away from the gut. We're not designed to digest and be stressed at the same time. So one really simple thing you can do, and I get patients to do this, is 5 diaphragmatic breaths before eating. Now, it will hopefully take you from fight or flight to rest and digest, which is essential for digestion to happen properly. But the other thing is I just say it because I know if I also say, if you took 5 breaths 3 times every day, that's 15 deep breaths. It's 3 resets a day. I know you're actually resetting yourself 3 times a day, and I'm just making it about food. But it's just actually a moment to do that. So you will see a direct result between those two things. And you know that a lot of people will find they're either constipated or they have really loose bowel motions when they're stressed.
Yep.
And we need to lean into, again, what is my body telling me? If I'm not hungry, it's not a great sign, but at least I'm able to check in and go, you know what, I'm not hungry right now, and it's because I'm frantic. It's not a great time to eat. Can I try and regulate my body? Can I regulate my nervous system? Can I get myself into a state where I can digest? And then we've got to choose this. No one's going to come and do it for us. There's no one that's going to be like, I'm going to take your bloating away, babe, today. Let's just not be bloated. Let me fix that. But if you think about going on a vacation, a lot of women will say, I'm fine when I'm on vacation. I was like, well, there's your answer. It's not going away all the time, but it's what happened when you're on vacation.
Yes.
And how can we kind of bring that into our daily life? We have to think about these things to create change.
Yeah, 100%. So for that person who is experiencing the bloating again for the first time in a number of years, we're watching our stress levels. We're doing the breathing. I love that tip as well. We're watching our diet. And
this is also the lifting part too. It's amazing for regulating cortisol.
Yeah.
Usually when we're stressed, we're often sitting down. We're not necessarily moving our body and moving cortisol through our body. It's really important that we do that as well. So it's actually getting up, going for one of the things, again, especially men, I'll say to couples that are coming in for fertility support, I'll say, how often do you stand up? They'll be at their desk all day. It's a big factor with sperm health too. So regularly having those moments where you are active makes a big difference.
yeah.
And it's not like I'm telling you something that's mind-blowing, but we don't do it. So I have to actually say these things.
We need the reminders for
we need-
sure.
yeah.
And that's probably why, how good do you feel after you have moved your body, right? Like, oh, that stress
It's
is
very
just...
interesting too. I think leaning into what your body responds best to. I know I respond better to moving my body at the end of the day than I do in the morning.
Okay.
But it's not possible to do that because of children and commitments and whatever. And so my husband and I actually train in the morning together. And that's great, and I'll take whatever opportunity I can. But I've been thinking about this lately, and I'm like, I'm so much better off when I move my body at the end of the day. I am one person that chooses high stress a lot. Like, that's a conscious thing that I know I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whether that's good or not, probably not. But I know that at least if I have that reset at the end of the day, then I'm actually doing something to kind of negate that somewhat. But it's not always possible. So you do the best you can with what you've got.
100%. Final question that I've got for you, and this has actually happened to me as well. This one came in. Since pregnancy, my hair has fallen out more than ever. It breaks off, particularly at the front. Why is that, and how do I overcome this?
So annoying.
Oh, so annoying. I'm like the biggest fan of like those hairsprays and stuff, just to keep it back.
Right.
What's going on?
Well, look, you don't lose any hair during pregnancy. So one of the main things to figure out or to realise, and just think about is that if you're not losing any hair in pregnancy, once your hormones start to change, and especially if you're breastfeeding, you tend to find that you'll lose hair around 6 months after as the hormones start to change. Usually as you start to introduce solids as well, you'll see that shift. Some women find that if they don't breastfeed, that maybe that's before the 6 month mark, a bit earlier than that. Everyone's different as well. It's just, I'm talking general here.
Yeah.
I think that's important to mention. So that's one reason that you might be losing hair. We can also see other changes that occur that are hormone related after pregnancy, and when we've got small children especially, there's a lot going on. Thyroid can often change after pregnancy, which can be another reason that we lose hair. And also the other thing that happens is we've also got little people around that sometimes are contracting things. They're getting sick, we're getting sick. So after a high fever is another time that we can notice hair loss or shedding, and after operations. So if there's been a cesarean, that's a pretty major operation as well. So after we've had some type of major event, it's common to lose hair. And then what I find is women are often temperamental at that point in time as well. So it just takes one more stressful event and you'll shed again. One of the main things that we can look at when it comes to hair health is definitely the scalp, and I think that's very underestimated. We look at the hair. We're like, my hair's breaking, my hair's falling, how do I fix my hair? Health starts at the scalp. So really treating the scalp is very, very important and often overlooked, I think.
What does that look like?
There's some amazing hair elixirs and hair oils that are out now, and that's my understanding is one of the best things that you can do to treat the actual hair follicle and then therefore the health of the actual hair itself. So this is things that I've more recently learned because I went through many bouts of shedding, and a lot of women were experiencing that, especially after COVID. So being sick, having a fever, and then stressful events along the way as well. So I think that's really important to actually look at is, okay, have I had a stressful, why have I lost hair? Have I had a stressful event? I've had a baby. Have I been sick? Have I had a fever? Have I had an operation? And then starting to nurture the scalp to allow it to regrowth. The other thing too is when you are putting some type of elixir on the scalp, you're massaging it. So one of the best things for stimulation is massage. It doesn't matter where it is. So really focusing on those areas where you've noticed that you've had some major shedding. And the other thing I've noticed as well is that when we shed, then the hair often is dry and it breaks. So again, it's still coming back to the scalp to look after that. We still got to look after the health of your hair. So finding the right products I think is very, very important for that. But looking at it from root to tip is very, very important.
Yeah, I love that. For those listening, to wrap up, what would be your, I guess, one hot tip that everyone can take away today when it comes to improving our well-being and our health?
I think the first thing we have to do, and we kind of touched on this, is we have to move stress from an unconscious to a conscious state. So what that means is, how can I start to check in with myself daily? One of the things we do when we're stressed, we either put our shoulders up to our ears or we find ourselves taking big breaths. We'll be like, So that's a check-in. Now, just because I'm talking about this and you're listening is enough for your brain to start to register, okay, and you'll start to notice that you do this. So when you find yourself doing that big sigh, or you notice that your shoulders are up around your ears, or you're just rushing and you can feel it, it's about actually in that moment going, okay, I just took one of those breaths that Nat was talking about. What's happening? I do feel I'm stressed. I actually feel like I'm rushing. I'm going from, appointment to appointment, got to pick up kids, got to put dinner on, got to do so many things. Does it actually warrant me to feel stressed right now? Does it actually matter? Because usually what happens is we have one major stress in our life and then we have a lot of little jobs. And the jobs are the things that we go, I've got a lot to do. I've got a lot to do. I'm so busy. That's the worst thing we can say to ourselves. And let's just reframe that. So we're now going, okay, I'm bringing my stress into a conscious state where I can actually choose whether or not it's warranted. And then the other thing I love getting busy mums to do is reframe busy and start to tell ourselves, I get to do a lot of things. I get to do a lot of things and I always get them done. And if I don't get it done, it's fine because there's tomorrow, and that to-do list is always going to be long. So just really talking to self and really having that conversation. This is so cute. I'm so stressed out about these things that it's just busyness, and I get to do a lot of things. And how much nicer does that feel?
Yeah, totally.
I get to do a lot of things because you are doing it anyway. And how clever are you that you do them all? So we're just really reframing anything that's really snowballing that overwhelm that we can very easily spiral into. Get some awareness around it, have a little chat to self. And the more you do it, the less you'll start to get some awareness around it, and you'll be like, oh, that's a cute chat. Go me. I checked in with myself. I'm not doing that right now. I don't want to lose more hair. I don't want to be bloated. I want to go to the toilet, like all of the flow and effects. So I think stress really is the thing that I am very passionate in talking about a lot, because its flow and effect is to all of these other things. So if that's all you hear today, then it's just time to start to be aware of that.
Yeah, I love that. And reframing how we speak to ourselves, I think is
chat to yourself. I know I do it all the time.
Yeah.
My children are so used to it that they just let me be, but it's a great time to have that staff meeting, that own staff meeting with self. Like,
I love that. To wrap up, Nat, what's next for you? Anything coming up in 2025 that we should all know about?
oh my gosh, there's always things happening. There's always things on the radar. Now I feel like there are things, and we have got all sorts of things in the pipeline. We're hoping to put another book out in the next near future. So, it's been a little while. Yeah. And when we had a publisher come and say, would you like to write another book? I was like, no. No, I would not. We've got some great things on the horizon. I'm really thoroughly loving putting brands in front of our audience at the moment that are like-minded, because there's so much noise out there. So a lot of partnerships, a lot more podcasting, and a lot more community building, I think, because it can feel really lonely and we can get so many mixed messages. And it's not about anything being wrong. It's just about carving out and making good decisions for self. So how can we have that information to feel empowered and to make things feel a little bit more simple, less overwhelmed, less stressful, and make good choices?
Yeah, I love that. Love all the work that you do. So keep being your most fabulous self. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.